The first team to fall at the first hurdle were Manchester City. They were beaten on Saturday by Manchester United. Off you go.
Listen, first and foremost, it was just fun. You know, it was a pleasure to watch a Manchester United team playing the Manchester United way. You could see the club's DNA. We played with width, we played with pace, we had runners in behind, the effort and commitment were there. So fantastic start for Michael Carrick. 2-0 flattered City. It could have been 5 or 6 with the goals that got disallowed for the most narrow of offside decisions. Maguire obviously hitting the bar, really set the tone inside that first few minutes. But it's not unusual for a Manchester United team to turn up in the big games. They've made a habit of turning up in the big games and then chucking it in against the teams they would expect to beat. I'm sure they'll be at it again against Arsenal next weekend in the game that we're at. But for me, I'll judge Michael Carrick and I'll judge these players on the games that come after the trip to North London. Games against the likes of Fulham. I think Everton are in there as well. Games that United would be expecting to win.
Are you already being grumpy?
No, I'm not being grumpy. I'm just saying that, you know, Michael Carrick said it himself, I think, in the dressing room afterwards. Let's not get carried away by one victory. But no doubt about it, if they can maintain that level of performance, that level of commitment in the final 16 games, there's a chance they qualify for the Champions League.
I thought they were absolutely terrific, actually. The application level, the attitude, the intensity with which they played. Obviously, they weren't perfect. They're not. But what they did is they identified a weakness in the Manchester City team, Dean Ashton. That was that high line. And it's something that I spoke about in the build-up to the game live on talkSPORT. You know, the fact that Newcastle United had exposed it on several occasions on the previous Tuesday. And Michael Carrick had recognised that and deployed Amad Mbeumo and Patrick Dorgu for that reason.
Yeah, I think it was pretty obvious. And look, you know, Kirsanov and Max Elaine have both got fantastic amount of pace, so they can get themselves out of those situations. And they did. Kirsanov in particular, I thought, saved maybe 2 or 3 extra opportunities for Manchester United. And we talked on talkSPORT during the Newcastle-Manchester City game in midweek about Max Elaine and how well he played, but ultimately, let's see when he is genuinely tested. And he was, and he looked a little bit nervy, certainly in that first half, in such a big game and a derby like that. But I just think, you know, the difference in, and it's not about the formation necessarily, but I did think it helped. I did. I thought Kobbie Mainoo coming in, Michael Carrick bringing him back in, bringing the energy in midfield alongside Casemiro and setting free Bruno Fernandes. And not only was he magnificent in terms of what he creates, but I tell you what, he does set a press. He does work incredibly hard. He'll go and win the ball back. He'll make it really difficult for Rodri to settle on the ball. I think that was a big part of why they were able to counter-attack the way they did and turn over the ball was his positioning and his freedom in the position that he played. And if they can continue, obviously, with that, you know, nobody will want to face Manchester United. And defensively, again, maybe they need a little bit of credit. The organisation, considering he's had 4 or 5 days on the training pitch, was brilliant from them.
Well, not even that, actually. They had Wednesday and Thursday on the pitch, and then most of Friday was pretty much in the meeting rooms, really. They'd only had 2.5 days of training, I think, would probably be an accurate sort of description of how they managed it this week. But the integration of Maguire back into the team, you know, I spoke to him afterwards, Michael, and he was sort of saying, probably shouldn't have played him. Medical advice would have been, definitely don't give him 90 minutes, but he was that important. They needed that experience, that level of commitment that Maguire brings. And that was apparent in the first goal, right? So he gets fouled, he hobbles to his feet, he literally gingerly sort of limps into the defensive position, wins the big header that sets the counter-attack, and all of a sudden Manchester United are 1-0 up. Obviously, Lisandro Martinez has had his words with Paul Scholes and Nicky Butt. They're going to have coffee, apparently, around at Lisandro Martinez's house. But also, I think the other thing that we have to discuss is the possibility of a red card in that first 15 minutes. I mean, that could have changed the game, couldn't it? Dallo probably should have been sent off.
Yeah, I don't think there's any probably about it, to be honest. It was a really bad challenge that, had he have probably followed through it, it could have caused serious injury to Jeremy Doku. So, yes, United got lucky there. I haven't seen the explanation from the PGMOL. You probably have, but I don't know how VAR haven't intervened on that one.
Well, they say it was a glancing blow on the follow-through, Dean Ashton. I think it was a bit more than that. Pep Guardiola, actually, though, afterwards, to be fair to him, and to Bernardo Silva, who I spoke to in the tunnel, said, we can't use that as an excuse. We weren't good enough. So what was the problem with Manchester City?
I think in terms of their attack, they were stale. And again, you can't just use fatigue as an excuse, but he did play, the forward line that played in midweek. I was surprised Cherky was sat on the bench and Reinders also, because I thought they might come in. I think Reinders gives them something different in terms of that player that's going to run beyond Erling Haaland. And as soon as you saw the way Manchester United were going to defend, it was pretty clear Phil Foden and the likes weren't going to get any space, and Haaland barely touched the ball. It was all about Doku, really, on that side, and Manchester United did well to double up. So I think it was more. I think the sloppiness in possession was the biggest surprise. Whether that was partly due to Manchester United's intensity, but it was unusual just how sloppy they were in possession. Even Rodri sort of almost gifting Manchester United a goal, which is so unlike him. So I think that would be a worry, just in terms of the level of their attacking performance. And just to go back to the red card, I actually didn't think it was, and I tell you why. Because if you look, I mean, Doku obviously is slight in stature anyway, and the nature in which he moved. Look how low his knee is. His knee is probably shin height to Dalot. So it's not as if Dalot's really raised his foot high. And if you watch the technique of what Dalot is trying to do, he's trying to toe it away. So he's trying to flick it with his toe, flick the ball up in the air away from Doku. And the natural movement then is how his foot moved and caught Doku's knee. And it was a glance. It wasn't a firm stamp. It wasn't a leg through. It was a glancing blow to the knee. But when you slow it down, because it's on the knee and the angle and everything, but he's shin height off the floor, his knee. It's not as if it was high. Actually, I can see why people think it's a red card, because it looks horrible when you slow it down. But to me, that really isn't.
Yeah, but I think the guidance that you would usually get in those circumstances is if the studs are up and you contact above the ankle, you're in danger of giving away a red card. I mean, shin, knee, I mean, that is still very high. I understand exactly what he was trying to do, and I completely get that. But I think we've seen over the course of the season red cards given for that, and we probably will see red cards given for that again.
I'm pleased Dino has given that sort of description, though, because we were on with Perry Groves yesterday, and he actually said that Dalot went out to hurt him.
He did say that, yeah.
That wasn't the case.
He missed him by a millisecond, wasn't it? He almost got it. It's just Doku's that quick. He just nipped it away from him, and therefore he caught him. But there was literally no, attempt to hurt him at all. It was definitely just being a tiny bit slower than Doku.
What does it do to Manchester City's title ambitions?
I think they're in trouble. Not just yesterday, but it was obviously 3 successive draws before that. Erling Haaland has stopped scoring. They're still not the Manchester City team of old. Defensively, they've got massive issues. Obviously, Mark Gay coming in will help solve that. I just don't see they have the capability to go on the kind of run they're going to need to take advantage of the fact that Arsenal are a bit jittery at the moment. Dropping points at Forest. They drew 0-0 at home to Liverpool when they were second best in the second half, only just squeezed past a Bournemouth team who aren't winning enough games. But there's no real pressure coming in from behind.
It is interesting, isn't it? Because you look at Manchester City, and actually, in the January transfer window, arguably, if it had been anybody else who'd spent the money that they have, you'd be going, they're going for it. They feel that they can chase Arsenal. But these drop points over the last few weeks, Dean, have actually really given them a tough task.
Yeah, and I think it shows, even though they have spent a lot of money last January, and obviously they are going to in this January, teams are finding it easier to play against City. And I personally think it's down to a lack of pace. There's nothing particularly scary about that forward line. Doku's the one. Doku, and I know Semenyo, but Semenyo isn't like lightning quick that's going to really hurt you. I think of Sane, I think of Sterling, those wingers. and also those wingers that make those runs. Doku,
Yeah.
I can't remember a time when Doku's made a run from that outside position, inside the fullback, in behind, and going to hurt you. Well, if nobody's running beyond Haaland, Haaland is easy to mark. Two of you will mark him. Do you know what I mean? He's not the best player with his back to goal. So if you squeeze him, he finds it difficult. And if nobody's running beyond him, they looked really easy to defend against for Manchester United, who got into great positions. And like I said, other than Doku, there isn't anyone that's going to scare you.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because Manchester United haven't kept a clean sheet hardly all season. In fact, they've only kept 2 before the weekend, Newcastle and Sunderland, and then kept 1 against the most potent striker in the world.
Yeah, I never really felt like that was in jeopardy either. There was one moment in the first half, and I think Senny Lomans probably should have just let the ball go behind. He got his fingertips on it. It's a corner, and that was a little bit hectic from that corner. I think it was Haaland who nearly put it in from close range. But apart from that, as a United fan, you're sitting pretty comfortable. It wasn't like City were causing wave after wave of problems for that defence.
No. What about Michael Carrick's big decisions? He left out Cunha and Šeško from the start. That was a big call, wasn't it, Dean?
It was, but then when you reflected on the game and City's high line, then you could understand the reasoning behind it. I think it was more Dorgu playing maybe instead of Cunha. But again, as you talked about, for Manchester United, having that width, having that pace, and as good a players as you need to be, pace is a killer for any defence, for any defender that they don't want to play against. So it worked perfectly for Michael Carrick, who has to take a lot of credit for having the vision in that and having the confidence to make a decision like that. And then he did have to answer those questions from Gary Neville before the game about that team selection. I thought he was very good in what he answered, and the players delivered for him. And look, I'm always going to champion Steve Holland because of the impact he had on my career. But let's not forget what Steve Holland has done as an assistant in terms of at Chelsea, with England, and I think he'll have an imprint on Manchester United as well.
Yeah, without doubt.
Just on the Kobbie Mainoo situation, I was delighted for him because his previous 2 starts this season with Grimsby in the Cup was poor and we got knocked out. Brighton in the Cup, he wasn't great, got knocked out. But that's what Kobbie Mainoo brings you. And actually, I've had a lot of messages over the course of the season when he's played against Grimsby, when he's played against Brighton, even from people within football. Well, that's why Ruben Amorim doesn't pick Kobbie Mainoo. No, Ruben Amorim destroyed the confidence of a very talented young player. And I tell you what, under Michael Carrick, he's going to have a very strong end to the season.
Yeah, well, let's hope so, because he's a good English player. I think he was a bit of a lightning rod for all of the things that were wrong with Manchester United under Ruben Amorim, and sometimes that can come with a little bit too much pressure. So when he went straight into the team, obviously there was a lot of pressure on him to perform, but that wasn't the case on Saturday. People sort of almost forgot that he was not in the team, but like there were so many other things that they were worrying about that it wasn't the big talking point of the day. I do wonder how he manages the squad over the course of the next 16 games, because there is only 16 games, and he's got Šeško, Cunha, Mbeumo, Ahmad, Mount, all to try and squeeze into that team. Kobbie Mainoo, Bruno Fernandes. It's not an easy thing to do.
He'll be ruthless. He was ruthless with his first team selection. He was ruthless in his interim spell when he dropped both Bruno Fernandes and Ronaldo. He will pick the team week in, week out that he thinks is going to give United the best chance of success. I'm all for it.
Well, good luck to him, and I hope it works out for him. Manchester United troubling the top 5 now after that victory over Manchester City.
talkSPORT.